What's up, Soul Tribe? This is Ben hopping on here again today to talk about edging our orgasm as men. In a lot of our training, we talk about the masculine as the container that holds the feminine, that holds the water, right? And the masculine, as it holds the feminine, as it holds this water, the water will show where the leaks are. And our job as men is to hold this reverence for our mirrors with our partners, with the feminine, which is often not just our partners, but with life itself, showing us where we are leaking, not just sexual energy, but just our energy in general. And so the work in the initial stages of this is finding where the water is leaking out of our container, right? And as we patch those leaks, the water starts to gradually fill our vessel. And the water, the feminine being also sexual energy. The more we can hold, the more the energy raises, especially if we're practicing semen intention, what I like to call. Instead of semen retention, we're not repressing or restraining this energy. We're bringing intention and consciousness into it. But as we're practicing holding our sexual life force energy, you'll notice more sensations. You'll notice more pleasure, deeper orgasms. You'll also notice increased energy and stamina and creativity and focus and drive in life. And that's a whole nother subject to get into, semen intention. But the point is, as we hold this energy, it will continue to fill our container until eventually we're coming from a space of abundance of sexual energy rather than depletion, through constant ejaculation, porn, and all the other ways. So when we as men shift our state sexually from one of depletion, of needing to take sexual energy from porn, from women, from consuming, and instead we're bringing this overflowing sexual energy that I like feeling my fingertips talking about it right now. It's so good. But the more this container fills within us, right? And which is then manifested in our partners, right? We're holding more sexual energy. It starts to fill up to the brim and pour over the edges of the container. And this is the juice of life. This is the good stuff. This is where it gets real good. Because the game that we get to play is how much more sexual energy can I hold? And as this water is rising up and overflowing, the game we get to play is how much can I expand my vessel? Can I move upwards as the water is raising within this bowl, which is my masculine integrity, my ability to hold the feminine. And as this goes up, as the water continues to meet the edges of the bowl and spill over, we gain more and more and more sexual energy and deeper orgasms. And this is what starts to move us into the realm of internal non-ejaculatory orgasms as men. So this is what edging is. It's once we patched up all the basic holes in the bottom of our bowl, of our vessel, and as we're practicing semen intention, the energy starts building and building until it's overflowing. And now we're getting to play the game of how much more energy can I hold? And often in the sexual spaces, I like to say that this game is similar to like taming a bronco or something, bull riding. You're just like holding on to this energy and breathing and hanging on for every second, and seeing how long you can hang on to this energy before you get thrown off, dusting off and getting back on that horse, getting back into that game. And what a beautiful game it is, right? When we can show up with our partners without the objective of ejaculating as soon as possible, which is what the porn conditioning we've inherited has told us is like a successful, sexual exchange. Like bullshit. When it's all about her pleasure, and when we can actually ride those waves as well, and we can have what once like a 20-minute, 30-minute, 40-minute sexual session turn into an hour or 2 hours or more, it just takes it to the next level. And this is what a lot of the Taoist and Tantric practices can bring us as we refine our ability to hold more energy. And this is what all the training programs we do at Men's Sexual Mastery and the coaching I do is all about this. Just how much more energy can you hold? So one of the basic principles that I talk a lot about in these trainings when it comes down to brass tacks about how to expand your edge, your ability to hold, how to stretch into that, it is a lot like stretching actually. It's meeting an edge that is like you don't think you can hold it. You're right at the point where you're about to ejaculate, let's say, in a sexual session, whether that's with yourself, self-pleasuring. You can do this without being in a relationship, or whether it's with a partner. You come up to that edge, and let's say in the beginning, let's say like 85% of your pleasure capacity is like where you hit the point of no return and you go into ejaculation. Let's say that, like on a meter of 0 to 100 of sexual pleasure. Let's just say, for instance, you're at around 85%, like you get on that runaway train and you ejaculate. So the work that we do is, let's say, is to come up to like 84%, 83, 84, and notice, when you have an ejaculation, I talk a lot about this in the work. The core of all this work is nervous system regulation, is holding more energy and noticing our bodies contract, right? This is the parts of us that fight against us containing more energy. If you notice an ejaculation, it's a sympathetic nervous system response. So your pelvic floor squeezes tight, and you ejaculate, and the energy's gone. And again, I always say there's nothing wrong with an ejaculatory orgasm. It's a beautiful thing. I still have them from time to time myself, and they're even more epic when you're not regularly, dumping your energy all the time. There's a place for it, for sure, especially with a partner, compared to looking at porn. That's incredibly draining. But if you're actually having ejaculation with a partner, especially inside of a partner, there's, in the Taoist tradition, that can actually be generative, which is a whole nother subject. But yeah, as we are reaching these edges of playing this game, of seeing how much energy we can hold, getting right up to that edge, so let's say 83, 84%, you'll notice, your pelvic floor will start contracting when an orgasm is starting, an ejaculation is starting to happen. Your sympathetic nervous system is getting triggered. And the work we do, the training we do in our programs, is learning how to rewire our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system response, right? We have these default mode networks of, in terms of just like the way that our nervous systems react when that energy starts coming up. The default is that we slip into this contraction, the sympathetic nervous system response, which leads to an ejaculation, which gives a huge dopamine hit, oxytocin hit, serotonin hit, releases all these chemicals. So there's like this reward of following that pathway, and that's why most of us do it. And it's, again, still good, but the game and if you want to start exploring new internal pathways of pleasure, the game is to not release it. Just see if you can get right up to that edge. And when you're noticing that contraction, this is where it gets into the nuts and bolts, no pun intended, is notice the contraction coming up. Let's say you're at 83, 84%, and see if you can breathe into it. And we have a lot of tools in our training that we use in this as well. But even if you don't have any of these tools, the basic foundation of this is nervous system regulation, is breathing. See if you can relax your pelvic floor and reverse the pattern, the action of the sympathetic nervous system response. Open up to the parasympathetic, go inward and relax your pelvic floor even as the energy is building up. And by softening into our edges, that's when we start to stretch our capacity a little bit. We start to shift the neural pathway a little bit at a time. It takes a lot of practice. But at that 85%, let's say you're at 84.5, 84.6, 7, 8, 9, you're right at your 85% where you used to ejaculate, and you're holding it and you're focusing and you're breathing and you're relaxing, you're smiling. This is all a game. But that in those moments when you can flip the switch and just completely relax and let it go and not allow that runaway nervous system response, you're stretching to like 85.1% in that moment, 85.2. And the more time we spend at our edge, relaxing the nervous system, breathing deep, switching that vagal tone, they call it. For those of you, you can Google all this, but your vagus nerve is what controls your nervous system response. By rewiring this and relaxing as the energy is building, this stretches us. Just like it would, like if you practice yoga, right? Like you're in a, let's say, a really difficult pose, like a pigeon pose, and you're right at your edge, and you're feeling all the tension around it. And instead of tensing up, when you tense up at your edge, you don't move through it. The way you move through an edge is by softening, by the parasympathetic nervous system response. That's when you can settle into your stretch. And with that, it releases myofascial tension in the body, and you get that little 1% gain. And that's essentially what we're doing with our sexual capacity. In our pelvic floor, little by little, we're just allowing this energy to come right up to the point of no return. Breathe, regulate, and soften into our edges. This is how we move through resistance. This is how we move through our edges. One important thing here I'd say too is coming up against our edges, we have to be just inside of the point of our edge where we can regulate our nervous system. Oftentimes, many of us, especially men, we just push through our edges, and our nervous systems are just, our bodies are tense. We can't actually expand when our bodies are tense. It's impossible, actually. And we're actually feeding the problem when we're staying tense. And one definition of trauma that I like to use is like trauma is too much too fast. So we don't want to push ourselves beyond the point where we can't regulate, we can't relax, we can't soften. Because that's the portal. It's like it's right on the edge, softening in and noticing what comes up. And a lot of times, as you deepen in this work, so let's say you started at this 85% level and you're working up, 86, 87, 88. Over time, you're noticing, you're able to regulate, you're noticing higher amounts of pleasure in your body, you're practicing semen intention, these neural pathways are starting to open. There comes a point where, and for every man it's a little different, where you start to feel internal orgasms, essentially. Like when you start hitting those higher thresholds and breaking new unknown territory, new boundaries of how much sexual energy you've held without releasing it. There are these really subtle neural pathways, these, cerebral spinal fluid. I don't know exactly, I'd love to see more scientific studies come out about this, like what's going on in the brain and the spinal fluid and the pineal gland. But basically you start having these experiences of sexual energy moving up your spine, moving into your fingertips, to the tips of your toes, like this euphoric, sweeping, rolling, undulating, deep, deep sexual energy that I would say, I've never lived in a woman's body, but it reminds me, it's what I imagine. It's the yin orgasm. It's what women experience when they go deep into these deep states where it's like multi-minutes, multiple orgasm, waves and waves. And as you relax and deepen more and more into that over time, the neural pathways just keep opening and keep opening and keep opening. And if you're with a partner in this space, if you're and she's going into her states of orgasm and you have the capacity to also tap into that energy within yourself, then you're joining her, you're becoming one. And like her orgasmic energy is moving through you. And this, you can get into more and more deeper, I'd say more advanced Taoist techniques. And this is some of the stuff, we teach in my trainings and all this, but you can learn to circulate this energy with the breath, with your intention, with your felt sense through daily practices, but eventually until it's circulating between each of you. And literally it's just like it's moving with the breath, like as your partner is exhaling, you're like feeling the energy moving to you and you're inhaling it and you're exhaling and she's inhaling it. And this stuff gets like super psychedelic. It gets next level. This sexual energy, as I've talked about before, is our most divine, sacred God energy. It's our connection to the divine. This is, if you think about it, like the ability with our sexual energy, let's say with men, with our semen, that we have millions of semen inside of us that can create new life, like a baby that's a duplicate of us and our partner and the egg, the embryo. That we can literally create a baby out of nothing, a human being, this complex creature, There's nothing more godlike, more creator-like to create new life than this sexual energy. So it makes sense, that this is God's energy. And, when we can break through and out of the conditioning of shame, of guilt, of sin, of all these things we've been told about sexual energy, when we can upgrade the software from like porn and middle school anatomy, like these really limited ways of having sex, which, it's still fine. Like you still can have a lot of primal sex in those same ways, but when we can deepen into our ability to hold sexual energy, it can transform our whole life. Because we're no longer seeking outside ourselves. We are carrying that divine God energy, that bliss, abundant, orgasmic energy overflowing in every part of our lives, and especially in the sexual space. But this starts to feed out into our day-to-day life as well, where we're just exuding this je ne sais quoi, this mojo, this well-fucked energy. You know what it's like, when you've like had amazing sex and you like go out on a walk and just like the birds are chirping and life is good. Woof, yeah. Like, and when you're around a partner and they're well fucked and you're just like, it brightens life. It's bringing God energy into this 3D reality. So this is the portal of sacred sexuality. This is what we teach in our training programs. And yeah, for every man, this is like an opportunity. It's an open door if you're interested in this work to go deeper inside yourself, and by doing so to be able to take a partner deeper into her own or his own orgasmic bliss. So if you're interested in learning more about this, feel free to shoot me a DM. We've got training programs online. We have a self-paced course. I do one-on-one coaching. Our next 8-week group training is starting next month. We do in-person events as well with these online trainings. So I know a lot of us, myself included, have been in a lot of containers since COVID that are just on Zoom. And I mean, this stuff works great on Zoom, like the practices as a group together, the mirror neurons that are happening when we come together, even over digital format, it works still great. In the one-on-one sessions, everything works amazingly. But there is an extra special energy when we as men can gather together in these sacred and ancient ways and cultivate this energy in the 3D too. So that's also included with every one-on-one guy I work with, and guys who are in the group training. You get complimentary access to all the events that are going on. So yeah, if you're interested in that, hit me up, and wishing you all so much blessings today. Hope you all have a great Monday. And I'll see you real soon.